All right. Welcome,
Hi,
everybody,
everyone.
to the episode 7 Rings of Power breakdown. Uh, unfortunately, Harry has been pierced by a Morgul blade and is currently recovering in Rivendell. I trust that Elrond will have him back on his feet by next week. But in the meanwhile, I will be hosting, as I did a couple days ago, with our prediction video. Let's just do our introductions, and then we'll be off to the races. On the left side, we've got Strider.
Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here.
Once again, I'm Gregory. And then in the middle here, we've got Negroni, hailing from Chile.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here.
We've got Lakitia.
Hi, great to be back. We're almost done with the season. Yay.
We've got Hen.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
And finally, we have Frederick, who will not be participating in the chat today because he is handling the back end of all the media and everything for Harry today. So
he's also here to, raise our beauty factor. So
yes,
exactly.
Yeah,
So if anything goes wrong, blame me.
The incredibly studly Fred. Look how he has his own place underneath all of us. He's just there alone. We really want to put a spotlight on the man behind the episode producing the whole thing. So with all that in mind, let's get going from just the top of the episode with Galadriel waking up covered in orange dust. Orodruin has just gone boom. Lakitia, why don't you start us off? What are your thoughts about how the opening scene unfolded?
Well, first of all, it was very visually striking. It's been one of those shots that we've seen in trailers and in promotional material, and I think we all kind of speculated what that might be. For me, that first shot certainly didn't disappoint. But one thing, maybe I'm being too quick here, but one thing that did surprise me was that Galadriel didn't, once she got up, found Theo. She didn't try to locate anybody else, but she more or less just took Theo to safety, which surprised me quite a bit. I would have thought that she would have stayed and try and aid it as many villagers she could. So yeah, that bit I found a little bit puzzling, but yeah.
I think it's just missing in the edit or something. It feels like that.
Maybe.
I noticed something along those lines too. More that how did they get separated from everyone while meanwhile all the Numenoreans seem to be gathering together? Strider, have any thoughts on that?
Like Lakitia and Han kind of touched upon that. It's confusing, and I don't know. I hope it's just cut out from editing, because otherwise it feels like skipping on some logical steps just to make the dramatic situation possible. And the dramatic situation in this case would be the two of them together. So
yeah.
I don't know. I'm hoping that we will get like an extended edition of the whole season, because throughout the whole season, if I haven't been saying anything, if I haven't been saying that there feels like a lot of stuff is missing and they need longer episodes. So maybe something happened and then it got cut out, and then that's why they're separated, because they were in the village. Why wouldn't you stay there and try to help people?
It's like the next we see them, suddenly they're like totally by themselves on the road. Yeah, something's missing. Something was cut out.
Now, Negroni, moving on from that point, which I think has some merit for sure. As far as the meat of the interactions between the two of them and what we're seeing as far as the character development between the two of them, what did you think of that?
I was mainly annoyed by what you already said. Like, it felt a bit forced to have them, the two of them together. But beyond that, it didn't do much for me. It was just more of the same that we have seen from characters already. Don't have much to say about it.
Anyone else like to chime in as far as what we saw between the dialogue between the two characters?
I just want to say that I thought Galadriel showed a very worrisome lack of empathy for Theo, who just felt that he potentially lost everyone he knew, including his mother. I felt that her advice to him was very, very stern, which I wasn't. I mean, I don't need her to be the most compassionate person in the world, obviously not. But the way that she sort of handled it, very, very, strictly, reasonably, logically, and she
Take it out of your mind was basically what she said.
yeah. Whereas she
Like-
herself acts very much on impulse and seems quite, emotional, temperamental. I thought that was a little bit weird, but yeah.
It improves though. Later on, I think she opens up a little bit more. It does improve. That's early in the scene, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's true. But I would also add one thing. Maybe it's symbolical of her starting to turn around and her character arc starting to go into another direction. But she gives up the sword to Theo. So that could be maybe something. Yeah, like so. There are like two things. She gives up the sword, which is something that Elrond told her in the first episode, I think. And Theo trades the dark, let's call it proto-Morgul blade, and takes the Elvish blade. So maybe that's like also another. So maybe that's like the symbolism of the two of their character arcs going different ways now. But I don't know if we should look at it that deeply, but it was a cool thing to see.
We know from the interview ahead of season 2 that was just released that they just, had fittings with Galadriel again, like in armor and with a bandolier this time and a sword. So she's still gonna be a fighter, which is fine. But yeah, maybe a little bit different. Yeah.
And I have a question. What did you all think of the looks of everything burnt up and the ashes and all that? I think it looks amazing, actually. Like, I tend to have issues with stuff like that sometimes, but with this show, I keep getting impressed, actually.
Yeah.
I thought, it looked gorgeous. I mean, the color palette reminded me a lot of Dune. I mean, it's just the orange, I suppose.
Okay.
But yeah, I thought it looked great. I was a bit surprised.
Oh, pardon me. Go ahead.
No. I just wanted to say that I was a bit surprised, but this is, of course, just a matter of different lens that they applied when we were seeing Mount Doom erupt from within the village. Mount Doom seemed to be looming over the village, like super close. But now, in the image that we have on screen right now, and I understand that this is from a hill a little bit further out, but still, it seems much more far away. So, yeah.
That opening shot in particular, I thought was gorgeous. The way the camera moved around Galadriel and her original, her first coming up, and then the horse rushing.
The burning horse.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the questions that we sort of, I think, were in the Twitter sphere, so to speak, after the first episode about the pyroclastic flow and will people survive. I think. At least for me, I didn't mind it because, there seemed to be an appropriate amount of damage done without killing all the characters. And I was like, all right, well, we are in a...
That does help, yeah.
Yeah. It resolved that some for me.
But on the other hand, sorry, before you done, I thought you were done. Yeah. I just want to, on the other hand, she was standing right there without trying to move away at all. I was thinking, for the last 1 minute, should I say it again? But I have to say it again. Nothing happened. Okay, she's dirty because of the ash and all that. She's covered with ash, but she zero injuries. And as we will see later on, nobody else got injured. Halbrand,
no.
Something kinda maybe happened there. Who knows? But that
somebody else.
Like a sword wound or something, or like a cut. That doesn't feel like an actual. But whatever. Let's not go into that maybe just yet, but otherwise, all the characters, nothing happened to them except a certain Numenorian, but that's all.
And I feel like
2 Numenorians. Sorry, go ahead.
That one doesn't count. Yeah.
I feel like the pyroclastic flow was too like an explosion. If they wanted everyone to be safe in the end, it would have been more smoky. But it felt too fiery, and Galadriel just standing with a flame in front of her was this is a bit weird, but okay.
To me, the issue of them surviving it is very minor. The more major issue is just the idea of, oh, we have Mordor now, you know, and that's something that we will get to probably at the end with the closing shot.
Yeah, we'll get to that at the end.
We'll get to that. Yeah.
You know, and actually, you know what? I don't mind bringing that up because it really is part and parcel with that. I know, kind of, you know, I've seen some of your discussion and having your you've had some frustrations with that, but I'd like to hear what the rest of the team thinks about that. I'll start with myself. I personally don't have the same problems you do with sort of instant Mordor sort of forming in this way, or at least not the way this has been crafted. But I will say that my personal take was that the changing of the script on the scene or on the screen from Southlands to Mordor, that felt a little
yes, that's cheesy would be the word.
Yeah, but other than, I don't mind how they're doing it. I just wish that particular moment had been different. But how does everyone else feel about it?
Funny.
I actually. I'm gonna be quite quick with this one. I actually thought the changing of the name on screen was just such a over the top cheesy moment that I absolutely enjoyed the bleep out of.
Oh yeah, me too. It's funny.
In the end result, I mean, I love it. I think this is gonna be one of those things when I rewatch the show after, I don't know, a few years, and I'm gonna like, oh right, so this happened. That's quite amazing. But yeah, I'm not feeling quite as antagonistic as Hen is. Mostly because there were strong rumors that something like this was gonna happen, that Mordor was gonna appear out of thin air, and I thought, I was worried it was gonna be much worse than it was. I think the visuals at the end of the previous episode were quite amazing. So all in all, I'm feeling less, I don't know, less bad about it than I thought I would be. So, yeah, there it is.
Oh, what about you, Strider?
In my case, oh, sorry.
Yeah, for me, I don't mind Mordor being created in this way. Actually, I think it was quite cool, and I think they did their part in earning it with the digging the tunnels and all that. So, but it was funny the way they did the Southlands. Nope, Mordor. That was the funny part. Definitely, I'm not sure what to think about it. Just seriously, funny. I think they could have done Nerd of the Rings. Matt said, I watched the video today, like his watch party, and he said that he would have preferred if that happened, if they maybe did like a map transition and then on the map it changed. Maybe that would be cooler. But that was like a video game thing that would happen. Like you get like the loading screen, and now it's like morphing into this. I don't know. I don't care. It doesn't ruin anything. It's just funny. I don't know.
Andrew Mena in the chat says he just wishes someone had said it. And I was waiting for Adar.
Yeah.
The camera's on Adar, and I just expected him to, and I don't know where the word Mordor comes from. It's the Black Speech, but I don't know.
Shadow, I think.
What? Sorry.
It's Land of Shadow, and Galadriel actually calls it that earlier in the episode. That would have been a great place to find a way to work it in, but oh well.
That's a great point. That's a very good point. Negroni, do you have any thoughts on that? This particular.
I was just thinking that a comparison to that would be like the somehow Palpatine returned from episode 9 of Star Wars. It's like the same kind of, well, Mordor is here now, but it's clearly for the people that aren't like super fans that know the Southlands are where Mordor will be. And to me, turning the Southlands into Mordor, like from one day to the other, it falls into the same issue overall with the show, that it's making everything happen super fast, like at the end of the age, like kind of Lord of the Rings, but second age. So I already accepted that before beginning the show. So I totally get it that it happens from one day to another.
Yeah, in a different stream, in a different place, maybe we'll discuss how the show might have handled the 3,000-year period of the Second Age differently. But for now, we'll stick with breaking down this episode, just because I think we could spend hours doing that. So the last thing I wanted to bring up specifically in the Theo and Galadriel conversation is Celeborn. What do we all think of that?
The husband in the room.
That are funny. Yeah.
That
all right.
was.
Well, I want to start with Negroni this time. We're going to go backwards. Sure. Negroni, what do you think about all that?
Oh, I muted myself. I'm sorry. I just wish Celeborn was there from the beginning. I overall have an issue with the sexual tension that you feel with Halbrand at sometimes. So I just wish Celeborn was here, and that like they had established more of a relationship already. So I don't have much else to say, because Celeborn feels like one of the central pieces of the fandom being annoyed at the changes. So I'll leave it at that.
Sorry, anyone else chime in? I had a question and I totally forgot what it was, but maybe it'll come back to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think Celeborn is one of the great missing links, because he's like a blank canvas, and you'd expect a prequel like this to utilize that, to take advantage of that, to show us why this guy is so important when we do meet him, because he's like, he's just there, but if you like fill it up with something, at least he feels important. And yeah, he's MIA, and apparently have been MIA for MIA for what, like 1,000 years or so, apparently. Weird. And I hope it doesn't culminate in like Sauron coming to Galadriel. Oh, Galadriel, do you miss Celeborn? Like it's no.
Well, does anyone have any speculation about? Does anyone have any speculation about where Celeborn is?
Can
That's
I
an
just
excellent
add
question.
just a quick one before I answer that? I just want to say that I find this explanation of why they're not together very weird for their potential or eventual relationship dynamic. According to show canon, apparently they've been married for probably a few centuries at most, and then got split up by this weird situation where he's missing. So once they're eventually reunited, I mean that's gonna make for some really awkward conversations, I suppose. I mean, people thinking the other was dead for such a long time, them having experienced so much each on their own. I think that will, I don't know, that might bring about some unexpected troubles along the way, potentially. Or at least I'm afraid that that's what they're going for, writing this romance this way. Obviously, the elves mate for life, etc. Except, a few elves. But still, I find this a really weird choice. I would have much preferred it if she just said at the beginning of the season, I don't know, he's off in Lothlorien doing his stuff, or just sightseeing somewhere in the north or whatever. So yeah.
So I watched as I said, Nerd Rings, his stream, like the watch party, and at some point somebody asked him about reincarnation and elves and so on, and then he had a worrying idea midstream that, and I really hate this, but maybe Celeborn died, and he will get reincarnated and sent back instead of Glorfindel, which means Glorfindel will get shut down for the second time, and I will not stand by it if it becomes the truth. I don't know. That's a weird way to go about it, but who knows? But I don't know. I'm hoping he's somewhere. I don't know. It's very confusing. Like, what will be like? Let's try to imagine. I've been trying to do it the whole day. Like, what's the actual realistic scenario that doesn't make unnecessary drama? Like, where was he for
Greenwood?
1.5k years. I don't know, but still, it's like
perhaps
he wouldn't look for her in Linden. Like the last remaining part. Like I think all the elves in Middle Earth probably know about Gil-galad.
Yeah.
Probably know about it. Like if you're missing your wife, you got split. Like you gotta go and find her.
Yeah.
Plus, the one place you want to find her is like in Linden.
Yeah, travel isn't this difficult in this version of Middle Earth. So why?
Oh yeah.
I would imagine
she's famous.
If she thinks he's dead for a particular reason, then, and I don't think he wouldn't be trying to make his way back if he was able. I think the most likely situation would be that he is a prisoner of some sort. I don't know under what circumstances that would have unfolded. But perhaps, right, Sauron's been slowly gathering his strength. Perhaps there is a way in which, who knows, this obviously would fly in the face of some current theories about who Sauron is in the show, but depending on how much strength he has, perhaps Celeborn has been imprisoned for several hundred years.
I think that may be the likeliest solution, honestly. But then who imprisoned him, where, why? It just keeps piling on questions, and we do not have time to answer those questions. Like, there's no time to answer that. Like, if he was imprisoned, there's a whole lot of backstory there. Like, whatever he is, there's going to be so much things to unpack when he actually shows up. So I don't know when that will happen.
Wouldn't it be great if Halbrand had him chained up in his cellar somewhere?
That sounds like obscene.
Now he's gotten... Sorry?
Mad-Eye Moody style.
Oh wow! No, not quite as gruesome. I was thinking in another way, and now he wants to try out the other partner as well. Anyway.
Wow.
Wow.
No, okay, I'm sorry.
Let's
move on.
No, that's one way to interpret it.
Bisexual Sauron is something that's been trending recently, or at least these two things together. So I could see that happening.
That's okay. So I want to say thank you to Lakitia for actually creating one scenario I would actually genuinely hate more than Galadriel and Halbrand getting together. I didn't think there was something else, but
there's Rule 34 is gonna pop up now. And
just
don't do anything. We have quite a bit of episode to get to, so I'm going to move us along. Let's start talking about the Dwarves and Elrond. That was actually the second scene in the show. Elrond pleading his case to Durin III. And what did you all think of that? Let's start with Hen.
Oh, I love, except again the conceit of the Mithril itself. I love the dwarf and Elrond scenes in this. They have been almost most consistently kind of the best part of the show, and that's certainly the case here. Very, very. I don't know. It's just interesting and like well done, and
Yeah. Yes. What do you think, Lakitia?
I gotta say that the Dwarven storyline and the Dwarven Elrond storyline was one that I've found the most compelling so far, or at least maybe the most well done. In this episode, I did have some, I don't know, not exactly problems with it, but it didn't convince me quite as much, especially during the third, what I wasn't the biggest fan of, and I felt his reactions were very, I don't know, overly dramatic, especially by the end of his storyline.
Yeah.
But all in all, I really like the friendship of Elrond and Durin. I think this is one of my favorite friendships ever depicted in the world of Middle Earth so far. It seems beautiful. I was moved to tears several times during this episode by them. So yeah, I'm liking them a lot.
Yeah, I think that this is, I feel watching it that they genuinely, like, I was, even the actors I think must be friends. If not, they're tremendous actors, which they clearly are anyway, but it really just comes alive on the screen, that friendship does. I have
Yeah,
to
they've
say,
got. Mhm.
I'm going to add a quick little thing. We started with seeing, we saw how upset Disa was about Durin 3's decision.
Mhm.
And when she starts talking to Durin 4 about the plans for the future, I had this odd thought. Everyone's been trying to figure out who Sauron is. She was like, I was like, is Disa Sauron?
No, come on. I mean, it's obvious. It's clearly Beric.
We're doing that thing, I think, again,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clearly
She was
Beric.
very
What's wrong with
ambitious.
you?
I
She
see what
was.
you mean. It was a bit surprising to me, and especially when she started talking about, this is gonna be ours. We're gonna mine it one day. And in that scene, it felt quite obvious to me, or maybe it was just the way it played out, that her main concern wasn't for the well-being of the elves, but she's just like, oh, eventually we'll be able to fulfill our ambition, which I thought was, interesting. But yeah.
Did
I'm
we have
saying she's a mithril digger, but she ain't.
did we have
Nice.
one of the leaks, I think, was perhaps about some religious sects among the dwarves? Could this, I don't know, maybe somehow be something somewhere connected?
Oh.
Like we had that quite a while. I think it was maybe the first episode even I was on, like almost a year
Would
ago.
you mind repeating that, please?
So I think we had a leak, or that at least we heard the rumor that there may be some religious sects among religious sects among the dwarves, and that there may be some conflict in that aspect. So perhaps she did this, maybe like the doorway into that. What I'm just remembering something, maybe speculating or something, but just.
The one
came
thing
to my mind.
the one thing I would say to that and to other stuff like this is episode 7 out of 8.
Exactly.
And so to introduce something like that.
Mhm.
But maybe it would be
episode
like some sort of setup for the next season, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe, but then we wouldn't exactly probably hear as much about it. The main leaks aren't like this tiny little thing that was talked about in one scene, but something that is quite obvious. So I don't know.
Yeah, true.
But it would be interesting for sure. I mean, if she turned out to be this huge villain, I'm all up for it.
Yeah, Lady Macbeth.
Yeah.
But one of the weird things, it happens in this plot line and it happens in others. There are so many off-screen relatives in this. Like we have an Arion,
right.
And now
Yeah.
Durin has a brother that Disa mentions, and
there's Celeborn.
There's Celeborn, and it's like, what
Hopefully
is even
Celebrian.
going on? Yeah, no, that I think no.
Yeah, probably not, because she would have mentioned her, obviously, but yeah.
But sadly, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just there's so much of this, and it's like, what is going on?
To be fair, that's kind of canon. I'm re-listening to the Andy Serkis version of Fellowship right now, and I'm right at many meetings, and Frodo.
Me too.
Oh, nice.
Sorry.
He talks about how Glowin just keeps going on and on, talking about dwarf relationships and different people, and how like dwarves can just keep going on. And he totally lost track of who all the people were by the end of it. So that does feel very in world in a respect.
Yeah.
True.
I agree. I just at this point I just have to say that I'm sorry, but the Rob English version is by far superior. Okay, continue.
Okay, fair. I'll check that one.
Fox has spoken.
Negroni, what are your thoughts on Durin?
Yeah, same as Lakeithia. I pretty much what she said, but my thing is that the Mithril concept of elves like going to disappear by or something.
Yeah, that's
really hurt my nerves, because I'm a lore nerd from since when I was like 13 or something. So seeing that was a bit shocking, and then you have an entire episode where you don't develop that concept. So it was like 2 weeks where I had in my mind like this Mithril plot. Yeah, I don't like it. So like it had too much weight on me, but as Durin and Elrond are amazing as usual, so they
there is one
getting back on track.
Yeah, there is one aspect of this though that is, I think, very unsuccessful, and that's the Balrog during Spain.
Oh, right.
That's very like a quick blink and you not blink and you'll miss it, but it's like what's even the point? Like it's to really like show it barking at the camera, growling
Yeah.
at the camera more, like
And
That is very surprising.
and
I'm
very
gonna
cheesy.
I'm going to chime in on that as well. You know, to me the problem, like, I don't mind at all seeing the hints of the fact that they're disturbing the Balrog and stuff. And I didn't even mind the way that the leaf fell down and everything. I thought all that was nice. But the problem to me was that this Balrog is supposed to be sleeping, and I want to see it being stirred. You know, I want to see a sleeping Balrog that the leaf falls on the head and it rumbles. And maybe we don't even fully see what it is yet. So, like, I don't mind if that
Yes,
shot
that would have been better. Yeah.
is in season 2 or 3. Like, I don't mind. Like, I saw someone complaining that it's not much of a difference from the Peter Jackson version. I don't care. I think it looks beautiful as a piece of art and as a piece of CG. But I think that we're just not there yet. And to show it roaring at random shit in the darkness, I think makes sense. You know.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that, but in a way that might be a little bit too close to what we've seen in The Hobbit with, Bilbo awakening Smaug. So maybe they wanted to avoid that parallel. I don't know. I mean, of course, they could have done it in a way that would be much different.
Yeah.
I
I'm
just
gonna
wonder what a person who goes completely a blank slate into this, what would they like? You have to know about Durinsbane for this to be anything beyond what just happened. You know, it's like, what is this? What does that have to do with anything? Like, if I don't know.
I think blank slate might actually not be as bad because they don't know that it's supposed to be sleeping and everything. A blank slate person might be like,
a blank
what
slate
the
person
fuck
doesn't
is
know what
that?
a Balrog is and doesn't
No,
know
but
why
no,
there
they'd
would
be
be
like-
one down there.
I'm just imagining
You know?
if no one has seen anything, if someone knows nothing about this and all they know is that the dwarves are maybe delving too deep and the king is trying to prevent them from it, and then we see that shot, they'll be like, oh shit, the king was right. But I actually think it might work better if you knew nothing, personally.
I think maybe I definitely agree that just showing him just show up from the dark in the camera cheapens it, lessens the effect. It just doesn't make sense, doesn't feel earned. I think it would have been way cooler if actually one of you mentioned something like this just a bit earlier. Like if the leaf was falling down and we just see it kind of burn down as it falls, but we don't see why. Maybe we just see some hints of something burning below, and then you just see the leaf just disappear in the ash. Something like that would have been cool. But I think this is the first thing actually that took me away from this storyline, because I absolutely love the dwarves. I love during these Elrond. They're absolutely, the two of them, as the kid said, one of the best duos ever depicted on screen so far.
Yes.
But this was what just happened? Why?
At the risk of turning this too negative, because I actually personally thought this was a good episode. I
think most of us do.
I want to go to one thing which I think needs to be addressed before we move on to talk about other moments and other storylines. We see very clearly Durin toss the Mithril across the table that they took from the elves, and then the leaf unfurls, the blight is gone, and it really does seem to confirm what I think a lot of us feared in terms of I think there was a lot of speculation or hope that the Mithril thing, bathing in the light of Mithril was going to be like a ploy by Anatar or something along those lines. What do you think? Is there still possibility of that? What did we see? And I guess let's start with you, Strider.
Yeah, so I think it's very unlikely that will end up being the case, that Sauron is actually manipulating the whole thing behind the screen. But I'll say, I hope, but I'm aware that it's like basically impossible now. It would be really cool that if it actually turns out that Sauron is somewhere off screen, we haven't seen him yet, and that he's actually doing all these things, somehow impacting the world, corrupting it, and so on. Because we know that the villains do, like the villains of Tolkien's universe, they can impact time For example, the last king of Arnor drowned in the frozen waters of the north, and he was warned by the people that he was basically taking refuge at. Don't go now because the Witch King, or however they called him, has a lot of power because it was winter. He has a lot of power. Please wait for the summer and then leave our lands. But he was like, no, I'll leave. And then there was a storm as soon as they went to open sea. And there's kind of this implication, that, and more than once, that they can influence weather and so on. Even Saruman, even though it's not officially a thing in the books, but Saruman is also shown to influence the weather in the Fellowship of the Ring, the movie. So it would be cool to have Sauron actually do this, send the blight, and kind of somehow manipulate elves. But I think this is way too. I don't think it's possible. Sadly, I think this is exactly as it is, as they said it. Mithril has the light of the Silmarils for some reason, and it's curing the blight that's for some reason again happening.
I think it's a cautionary tale against, like trying to find explanations for all of these things that are happening that are not just, well, that's how they chose to write it, I think, we tend to come with explanations all around, and it's just, that's how they wrote it,
Yeah, and
Indeed.
red herrings are okay, but they have like a time and place, and we're reaching episode 8, so like if they don't introduce the sense that Anatar or Sauron is behind this by the next episode, I think we are. It would be like a horrible writing, like actually worse if suddenly next season it was all season 1 it was controlled by Anatar all the time. It would be like worse writing than we're getting right now. So I think it's almost too late for.
Well, keep in mind, the showrunners have mentioned that there will be a Sauron reveal by the end of the season. So it seems to me that we could, in fact, have a reveal and sort of a explanation of how he may be pulling strings behind the scenes in the finale. And I don't know if you saw that recent interview. Maybe it was you who posted it in the chat earlier, Strider. The not this chat, our chat. About the interview with the showrunners, and
No, it was Hen.
It was who?
Hen.
It was Hen. All right, cool.
It was me.
Oh yeah, cool. So, and it mentions that they are saying that every single one of the strings that have been pulled will be sort of coming to fruition in episode 8. So that could be what they're referencing, right? That in the Sauron reveal, we'll see how much of that unfolded.
Can I just say quickly, we've got a super chat from Bill C, so thank you very, very much. And Bill says, Mithril saves the elves, must be Sauron's magic. Otherwise, really disappointed. Yeah. One thing that I wanted to say concerning that is actually something that has been pointed out in Corey Austin's stream today on Lord of the Rings on Prime's official Twitter handle. It's that the Mithril saving the tree or the leaf at any rate doesn't mean that it would save the elves as well. And most importantly, the corruption on the tree itself is still hasn't been confirmed as actual corruption within the elves themselves. So I think that whereas we do see the corruption that is being healed, we still don't know for sure whether this does have anything to do with the elves at all, or the elves aren't fading at all. So I thought that was a really nice point, and that's something that I still hope is the actual explanation of it all. So that's, the elves extrapolating too much. Because otherwise it's really, really lore breaking, and I'm still not a fan of that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, so
I have a small point that if that was the case, like I would still be annoyed at Gil-galad's like portrayal of the character, because I don't know if it's in my head or not.
No, it's not.
But he should be like, all the elves were kind of corrupt in the first age, and now we are in the second age, and Gil-galad is like this true king, this like pure good guy, and it hasn't felt like that. So it was still corrupt the lore for me.
Yeah, we talked about that before. I know we all, most of us agree on that actually.
Guys, I'm gonna pull us back to the episode at hand. Andrew Mena in the chat mentioned something about wondering what everyone's sort of referencing as far as bad writing. I don't want to get into previous episodes, but I'll say that I personally thought that I think the writing has been improving steadily since the middle of the season, and with some flaws still, but I think it's been getting better. And I thought this episode, a lot of the character work was fairly strong. What do you guys think? What were some of, as far as the character work in this episode? Are you in agreement with me, or did you have a differing opinion on that? What were some of your favorite scenes? What do you think didn't work? And before we get into that question, Laketia, I'm gonna task you with reading all of our super chats with your
right.
you do it so.
Okay, we have another super chat from Bill C. So thanks so much for being so generous tonight. He says, yes, Sauron does with Linden and Mithril a flip of what the stranger does saving the apple tree. That's a very interesting take. I don't think we know for sure that it's that Sauron is doing the corruption, necessarily him, as such. But I could absolutely see that happening, and I think this is a very, very lovely parallel. So I really appreciate this comment. Yeah.
Let's get back to talking about the writing of the dialogue in between the characters, and maybe also the overall reasoning behind the storylines and the script, which I think maybe is some place where some of the writing has struggled before. What are you guys thinking so far for this particular episode? Negroni, what do you think?
I think it was good. I really liked that we finally have something for many characters to react to. Like many scenes used to feel like a little stale in terms of characters really expressing things, and you can clearly see Miriel and Elendil and all of them really reacting to what happened, at least on a facial sense. And what I have to say mainly regarding the writing overall of the show is that the showrunners seem to be like very like they are true fans of Tolkien's work, and they seem to at least listen to the fans. So I hope that they listen to the criticisms of the writing, of the pacing, and all of that for next seasons. Like I'm really hoping that things could get much better. First season is kind of meh on some aspects, but things could get much better. I hope so. In terms of writing, especially.
Yeah, you'd think season 2 is too late because they wrote it already, but maybe some of the later episodes they can still tweak.
Well, keep in mind,
a lot of
there's a lot of rewriting that happens in shows, TV shows on set. So that's certainly not locked. And in fact, I would be very surprised if they're not taking some of the feedback into
I agree.
into play as they're writing, and probably as they're going through production as well. Hopefully learning from some of their lessons. Laketia, what do you think about this episode in that regard?
Nothing stood out to me as particularly great or particularly terrible as far as the writing goes. I really appreciated a few of the parallels that they did. One thing that I noticed was when Largo had his little very maybe a little bit melodramatic speech, but very, inspirational and stuff. How that speech sort of paralleled the speech his wife had in episode 1 when she was talking about, the men had their fields of grain and then the elves have their forests. And in this situation, he was talking about, again, something very similar. I don't exactly recall what it was, but I felt this was a really nice mirror image of that. Some of the dialogue still doesn't convince me, and I think some of the character reactions that they made, not just in acting but in writing, some of the choices were very corny, like the one that I mentioned earlier with during the third. I also felt that making Elendil quite as angsty as they made him. I understand he just lost his son, but I felt that they take it a little bit too far. Those were the sorts of things that I really didn't appreciate. Also, this is also something I consider a writing flaw in a way, is that we've had all sorts of situations in this episode where people were looking for their relatives and they found somebody else and they were like, oh my god, this is my son. Oh no, it's not my son. That happened at least 3 times this episode. And I felt that was just, and I realized that this is what happens in these sort of situations, but show it once, don't show it 3 times.
I also
if I
think.
may,
Oh, please go ahead. You first.
Just one, like literally, absolutely 100% what Lakita just said. I'll just add one tiny thing that we had 3 fake out deaths for Bronwyn, or her being dead or something.
Yeah.
I just want to like absolutely everything she said. That's exactly how I feel. Just to point that out.
Yeah.
3 fake out deaths for her. So just no.
Yeah.
I think to Lakita's point, one of the, a lot of these moments are just fine until they take it one notch too far, and it gets like slightly too sentimental, slightly too on the nose. Both with the speeches of the Harfoots or Elendil's emotion, and when I think about that, it's really hard to put the problem there in one place. I mean, ultimately, I think you have to lay it at the feet of the showrunners because they're in charge. But I think acting wise, it's a bit of a, it's probably more directorial than at the feet of the actors. The actors are the ones who have to get there, but the directors are the ones responsible for guiding those performances. The actors are, it's hard for them to see the tone of the show in the midst of it, especially in the middle of a first season. And then I do think it has to do with the writers being overly sentimental to begin with. But again, I think that comes back to the director needing to pull back on those strings when they're watching it unfold on set. So I don't know, that's my particular take on some of those scenes, but I don't think they're bad. I just think they push a little too hard,
Yeah.
Just like, for example, we said we know that the show is being produced obviously for as many different people as possible to have like this really huge worldwide audience, and obviously not all of them, most of them will not be as big of a Tolkien nerds as we here are, for example. So we know things, and someone who may have not watched the movie and doesn't know who, and obviously they haven't read the books, doesn't know who Isildur is, so they may actually think he's dead, but obviously he's not. He's going to come back. But to have that with Isildur and what we mentioned, like with Bronwyn and some other characters as well, it's just too many fake outs. It's just like too much, and then it takes away from when Isildur comes back, because you just cheapen the effect. And I mean, I think it's a good point that this is the first season, of course, and it's a good season. It's a first season that's trying to set up so much, a huge world with a lot of storylines on a lot of locations, with a lot of things happening. So I'm hoping, I think we're all hoping, and we should give them the benefit of the doubt for the future seasons. Hopefully this will not be happening. Yeah.
We started briefly to start talking about the Harfoots. Let's move on to that. Negroni, how did you feel about how those scenes unfolded with the Harfoots and the strangers and all that good stuff?
We finally saw the the apple scene from the steals. I keep liking it. It has been weird to me that I didn't expect to like it in the beginning at all. Like with me, as I said, like being so lore intensive or lore passionate, but the Harfoots characterization have definitely won me over time, and this keeps being the same with the issues that the show has. So I'm just worried. Again, I tend to think, analyze like show-wise where the Harfoot will go on next seasons, because it's such an important plot that they have shown to the public. So what will they do for 5 seasons? That worries me a bit, because beyond the stranger, I don't think they could do much. So my worries lie there, not much on what's happening on the moment.
And what do you think?
The Harfoot storyline, it benefited from being, it's usually given plenty of room to breathe in the edit, so that always helps it. Here, two things happen to it. Like, it's still done, like, it's coherent. There's not this feeling that things are missing like in other storylines, but one thing is, I do think that Largo's speech is a little too saccharine and not aided by the decision to have him look into the lens of the camera. You do that in movies and shows sometimes. It's very dangerous. It can be amazing and very like tense, or it can look very weird and take you out of it because someone is looking into the camera. And it does that here for me. The other thing is, there are mystics in this episode. We've seen them in a previous episode, but they've really only come into the plot halfway through this second to the last episode, which is always not a good thing to do with something that is going to be important to the plot. And they're witches. I mean, like, they do magic with fire, and later on from the preview to the next episode, they seem to do shapeshifting with Nori's hair or something. I don't know. It's like those elements, like,
Who do we think they are?
Witches. Seems to sum it up. Yeah, I mean, they're acolytes of some sort. I'm assuming of Sauron's, and it's like, because they're evil. I mean, just everything about them screams it. And yeah, it's just I don't know.
Otaku Senpai said in the chat, the mystics, hang on, I think they're from Kant, so Variax. Also, hi to Otaku Senpai. So yeah, I think that's an interesting one. The one thing that I have most problems with is the use of magic. We do know, of course, that there were other people using dark magic, etc. But this was, correct me if I'm wrong here, if my lore is a little bit patchy, but I would imagine that these were the people that, I don't know, Sauron or Morgoth taught dark magic to. In this case, we have Sauron, who's been missing for a while, and the last we heard, he was trying to do good and heal the land, etc. So I don't quite, I don't quite understand where these mystics would learn this magic. But also, I think this show is playing, a little fast and loose with the lore when it comes to magic. Now, I would much prefer it if they kept the magic as minimalistic as possible and as close to the lore as possible, and only use it in situations where it was really needed to push the plot forward. Like, for example, where I liked it when Meteor Man, healed the tree. I thought that was a nice touch. But random people we know nothing about just setting fire to everybody's wagons, I don't know. That makes the antagonists, who in this case are very, very cartoony, in my opinion, very villainous.
Yes.
Whenever they appear, the music is tom tom tom, and now they have some really OP magic. I could see this being problematic in the long run.
Yeah, one of the things I like about Tolkien writing or his world in general, it's that it's the lore, the history is very detailed, but the magic has a soft system that it's called, where you don't have much details of how the magic is applied or whatever. Mm-hmm. So in the Lord of the Rings, we only see it when it's necessary, as you say. So yeah, I think it should be more subtle in many ways, the use of magic and the things that overall the show creates, but yeah, especially the magic.
I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here. In The Hobbit, when the dwarves and Bilbo are up in the tree, and the goblins and the wargs are at the feet, and I'm talking book, not films here, obviously. Gandalf starts lobbing fireballs at them. And granted, it was a necessary situation, right? And we can all argue about, how well The Hobbit fits in tonally. Obviously, there's some inconsistencies with the rest of the world and stuff, but especially considering going back in the further ages, magic is employed differently, and I would argue less softly by the evil than good. Right, the soft magic theories more applied by good, and the attempt to do hard magic is a character trait of those who are evil. So I don't have as much of a problem with the mystics employing that sort of magic as I would if it were the elves or something.
I agree with what you say. I hadn't thought of that, so that's a good point.
I don't know. For me, with Gandalf, I felt it was different because he's a Maya, and he's you know, even in The Hobbit, he's a wizard. But these look like regular humans. So unless they come up with some sort of explanation that they're like a lesser class of you know, the Maya, then I don't know. What I'm worried is that they're not going to give it an in-world explanation, but that they're just going to either leave it unexplained.
I think so.
Which I mean, I do appreciate the soft magic system like anybody else. For me, fantasy is more fantastical when we have a Lord of the Rings kind of magic system as opposed to a Mistborn kind of magic system. But in I would like it to be justified within the lore itself, and I didn't feel like this so far has been. But you know, maybe in the future it will be. And just before I wrap up, I just want to give a shout out to Bill C. We got another little super chat from him, and he says at least the Harfoots had moral growth.
That's right, Melva.
Malva was the MVP of this episode. I was ready to crucify her 2 episodes ago, and I think this episode she really showed some strength. So maybe, you know, this her character arc is similar to a certain Lobelia Sackville Baggins, whom we all hated at the beginning, and then ultimately we're like, oh, you know, she's pretty cool. So
that was a good moment. It was a good moment, that's for sure.
Yeah. She had a line that I quite enjoyed. No, Sadek had at her. You know, look at it, Malva. Just once, it would be grand if you weren't right all the time.
Yeah.
But to be fair, it felt a bit weird because she was wrong this time. Obviously, she just like I liked that he said it to her, and it was a good, you know, husband wife vibe. But she was literally wrong. She just agreed that she was wrong, and now, you know. So it felt good. But just to go back to the magic bit, I saw a cool theory to that. I think I sent it to the chat, that maybe the stranger is one of the blue wizards, and that the other blue wizard already right earlier, but was corrupted, and then he created this cult that the mystics belong to, and they're looking for him, and that's why they have the same constellation that the stranger has. And that's why that's the connection there. I'm not sure if it's true, but it would be cool because obviously it looks very, very likely that this guy is indeed Gandalf, or at least Radagast, or, you know, one of the Istari that we have seen and that we know. But I think we're all hoping to get blue wizards because they could be there very realistically and it would fit, and it would bring something new without retreading the same ground with Gandalf. But so I don't know how likely this is, but I think it would be a really cool way to do it. And I think it was, and just one thing. So I think it was also a really good point about having the villains have more expressive type of magic. But I also fear that this will be left unexplained, as like Peter said. I feel it will be unexplained in the end, and I think we should really have an explanation for this. So, yeah.
Right.
Sorry, I just see a comment in the chat. Regarding the 2 blue wizards, this would actually be a good way to, because they have several backgrounds. Of the first one was that the first theory, the first version was that they became corrupted, and they became the leaders of cults in the East. And then the second, the latest version of the story of the blue wizards was that they actually did a lot of good stuff in the East. They took away from the evil forces, they weakened Sauron in the East, and that's what helped the people of the West actually triumph. So this would be an interesting way to combine those 2 different type stories regarding the blue wizards by having one turn good, one stay good, one turn evil. So it would be interesting.
That's a really interesting theory that one of the blue wizards started inspiring sort of sorcery of sorts among people in the East in Rune, which is where we know the mystics are coming from, and maybe perhaps trying to capture the second blue wizard and have him come to their side, and maybe the stranger's journey is to stop that, or perhaps turn the other blue wizard back to. I mean, that would be a really choice on the part of the showrunners if that's the direction they're going, in my personal opinion.
The one thing though that it's just the kind of magic that they do, more so than the kind of explanations for that they can do magic. Like Gandalf lights up fire cones. These, they take a torch, they suck the fire out of it, do a and then everything, like, it's much more like multi-step kind of like type of system quote unquote of magic. So it's like, you know.
And they're so much more powerful. I mean, Gandalf literally, throws the cones and they start little fires there. But these ladies, they just blow it, and all the wagons just go up in flames. And just we have another super chat. If I can just read that out, and then
please go ahead.
Bill again, he says, thank you so much, Bill. We really appreciate it, by the way. If Morgoth could transform spirits into Balrogs, could he similarly empower people, our Wicked 3? Which I think is a good point, but by this point in time, Morgoth has been safely stowed away for quite a while. So unless these three ladies are also immortal, I don't really see that happening.
Yeah. And again, beyond the magic, it's the way the magic is that is objectionable, let's say.
This is a great discussion, but we are getting a little bit away from talking about the episode, and we are running out of time. So just a couple little things left, and then we'll wrap up. First of all, one thing I missed when we were talking about the earlier section. What do you think about Miriel going blind? I think someone actually predicted that in our prediction chat the other day. How do you feel about how that was handled?
Yeah, that was a leak actually that we've covered a couple of months ago. Yes. I was quite surprised by how they showed her and Isildur getting hurt at the same time. That was an interesting choice. That was another fake out death that we have on our hands. And of course, another character left stranded in Middle Earth with all the Númenóreans traveling. But her blindness itself, I felt it was perhaps done a little bit awkwardly. And I worry about whether this is just I don't know, just a short-term thing to make her more, I don't know, to speed up her character development. But yeah, what did everybody else think?
I don't think so. I think it's meant to be a basis for her usurpation by Pharazôn, that she's blind suddenly would help.
No, please, no.
Yeah, I get your point though. I do. Yeah, it's like, it's a bit strong maybe, but I do like, that's the one real bit of consequences for the characters, that we come away from this Mordorification with the Miriel goes blind, because the other major characters, Ontamo doesn't count. He's been walking with a tombstone on his head for 2 episodes. All the major characters survive pretty unscathed. Isildur is, spoiler alert, gonna survive. So it's at least Miriel. She got blind, and that's like that's real serious. And they spent a lot of time on that, and it's like I respected that, doing that.
Super Chat commented on this as well. I read it and then you take it away. Bill says, weakness leading her to lean on her advisor.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So I think that this can work on a few levels. So first of all, her father told her that what awaits her in Middle-earth is darkness. So that works, first of all, the darkness because of the volcano and the darkness it will create, like the land of shadows and so on. She gets blind, but also actually, I just realized something. So in this episode, she refers to her father with his R in Ziladun, his his non-elf friend name.
Yeah,
So actually, I think this may also refer to Numenor, perhaps kind of symbolically losing the sight of the things and going to dark side.
Oh, that's nice.
Because she loses the sight, she becomes what she said at the end of the episode. We will be back. They will regret starting this war and whatever. So I think that's maybe actually the darkness also in that sense, that her going blind means Numenor is losing the sight of the actual right path, and they're definitely going towards the dark side now. And what happens with her and Pharazôn, that's another question, because I think we would all expect her in lore, she is one of the faithful, but maybe this show will take us the other side because of what just happened to her in this episode. So I think that could be a nice little symbolism there.
That's a nice point, and I think some good writing, actually, in my opinion. I just want to say about Antimo really quickly. I was reflecting about how the second he said, "I've had enough fighting for a lifetime,"
Yeah.
he was
Even before that, the episode before, he has a sweetheart of his, and she's like, "Oh, when you come back," and it's like, you're a gunner, you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. I want to move on to the last sort of big thing, in my opinion, to talk about. Halbrand. Now we got the sort of not fake out death, but where is he? And then he's injured and blah blah blah. In respects, well, I'll leave my opinion for the time being. I want to hear what you guys think. Let's start with you, Negroni. What did you think about how we unfolded with Halbrand in this episode?
Too little, too late. I think it should have been earlier. Like, we have been with him so much of the season, and suddenly he's away most of the episode, and then he's like dead. So yeah, I am not a big fan of doing those kind of things, like what they did also with Bronwyn, also like kind of disappearing for a while.
Elrond.
Yeah, also.
I guess I mean more. Where do you think we're going with Halbrand based on what happened towards the end of this episode? I mean, by the way, apologies. I don't mean thank you for your thoughts on that. I definitely appreciate that component of it. But just in terms of where this leaves us going forward with him, what do you all think?
I'm puzzled, very puzzled on this, because I clearly see the potential of Halbrand being Sauron, and I'm still unsure how they could deal with that. But the hints are all over the place, and then you add what Hen said about some things that we try to explain ourselves, and the things that they are actually happening. So I don't know. I just hope they handle him as better as possible. But I'm not satisfied with his character thus far.
What do you think, Hen?
Yeah, do you want to say something about Halbrand and his wound?
Yeah, I'm on the fence if what you're getting at is who Halbrand is, if he really is just the king of the Southlands or Sauron. I'm still a little on the fence, but the fact that Galadriel is taking him to a region, which is in itself rather a hokey moment, because apparently he's too wounded to be treated, but he is not too wounded to ride across like half of Middle Earth. Okay, but putting that aside for a moment, I mean, she's taking him to a region for crying out loud. It's like it's screaming like Sauron, even though I don't know. It's weird. Very peculiar.
Yeah, at our lore panel on Sunday, Mike asked the question, what do we think if Halbrand is Sauron, how does he get to a region? Because obviously he has to get there. And well, well, sorry for that. I think we got our answer. He's going there to be healed. But then again, it's very, again, in a convoluted way. I think that's one of the famous words we use. often here, to get him to Eregion. Like, he's so wounded, he has to travel all across Gondor and Rohan and Anadvite and Miniliad to get to Eregion, and while he's dying.
The traveling in this season is weird. Yeah.
It feels non-existent, the distance.
But
it's consistent, at least, because it has been like that since the beginning of the show. Not like Game of Thrones, where you have like 4 or 5 seasons where the traveling is important. Suddenly it's not. At least they are consistent, and I'm okay with that.
Oh, that
I think
helps.
The question with Halbrand for me is, I mean, this was, in a sense, if the previous episode was the one where I felt the most that he was Sauron, this was the episode where I felt the least. And that some of that was his injury. I mean, it seemed like a very human, mortal injury, other than, I guess, as we were talking about.
Yes, I agree.
The fact that he's going to be able to travel all the way across the land. That would be more a Sauron thing to do. But also, if this is how Sauron gets to Eregion, why did he injure himself to falsify it so that he could find an excuse to go? Who knows?
But the thing, if it's not Sauron, and then we have to get to the plot of Sauron being Anatar and getting to Eregion, it's going to feel like, they are doing twice. Someone going to Eregion, being kind of out of place there.
The preview to the next episode does seem to promise a lot of Eregion.
It does.
That's
and
good.
I just want to say that we're having Halbrand arrive in Eregion at the very last episode of the season, where he's going to arrive there at a time where the elves have realized that the dwarves aren't willing to help them. So the elves are going to be in need of another power or something to help them survive. In comes Halbrand. I think this is way too much coincidence for him to be just this random guy from the south.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
for me, maybe this episode didn't make it quite as obvious, especially given the fact that we hardly even saw Halbrand. But where they've shown him go to, I think makes it very, very clear that this storyline is placing him in the right place.
To be
for the
fair,
to begin.
I think the episode itself doesn't say that they go to Eregion, though. The preview for the next episode kind of gives that up. So there's that.
But also, please.
Go ahead. You first, Strider.
Okay, so I just wanted to mention the fact that we do see Elrond having that piece of Mithril. So I think we are going to get the first ring done in this next episode. And that, again, also coincides perfectly well with Halbrand, though we do know that he never touched the 3 elven rings. So I wonder if this ring will be one of the rings, or just one of the precursor rings, because Gandalf says at some point that there were many different rings. So perhaps
lesser rings.
The lesser rings that were but an essay in the craft.
Yes,
exactly.
I have a question. What's the etymology of Anatar?
The Lord of Gifts.
The Lord of Gifts, yeah.
I was wondering if maybe in they do a weird thing where he comes to a region, he becomes a smith or whatever, and they give him the title or something. They start calling him Anatar.
Maybe that would be weird, but it could be.
Yeah,
because
at
the moment the only gift that he can give is a blood transfusion, maybe.
Well, knowledge,
Guys, I was reminded of a question that I want to ask, and then we'll wrap up. Actually, before I ask that, though, Lakita, would you like to read Bill's super chat?
Yeah, I would. Very much so. Bill says, I originally disliked Halbrand as Anatar, but it would explain why many high elves were fooled. Better than beautiful Anatar just waltzing in.
Yeah.
That's a good point. The last question I had before we move on to closing remarks. It occurs to me when we talked about the dwarves, we left off the culmination of those scenes in terms of the argument between Durin 3 and 4, and I guess the culmination is technically the Balrog, but the culmination between the characters there. What do we think in terms of, I'm not quite clear exactly. He didn't like fully disown Durin.
I think he did, but okay.
But maybe he did. I don't know. What did you think about what's going to happen there in terms of that harsh of a penalty being levied, and where do the characters go from here?
I think, but didn't we have some rumors that somebody's gonna bite the dust in that plotline? Regardless of that, I hope it gets resolved, but this late in the season, it would be very contrived if, this big argument happened in the penultimate episode, and then in the next episode, they start getting along very well. So I think this is just going to be, for the time being, we're just going to see Durin start harboring some mutinous thoughts. That's my best bet. But I don't think this is going to ultimately end in Durin not being able to, inherit. I think this is going to change at some point. But at this point, it looked to me as yes, that was the intention of Durin III, him disinheriting his son.
Got it. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the ends. We've gone over what I expected to, but it's been a good discussion. I didn't want to leave anything out. So as I go through each of you to do your little sign off, I would love to hear your favorite thing, your least favorite thing about the episode, and then 1 to 10. What do you guys think? And let's start with you, Strider. Favorite, least favorite, 1 to 10.
I need to think about it. Can you skip to somebody else?
Sure, we'll start.
Maybe somebody already has an idea.
Mine? Okay, favorite thing. Some of the earlier scenes with Elrond and the Durins, especially the first confrontation, not the other ones, which I agree with Lakidia get a little strong. With Durin the Third, those are very, very good. Least favorite, I'm like between the Mystics and all the Celeborn malarkey that's going on. I'll probably go with the Mystics and their use of magic. And a grade, my grades have generally averaged a 6 or a 7. I think this is again like a 6. Yeah, like good, but
Lakitia, why don't we go with you?
All right. My favorite thing about this episode were the friendships, as has been the case throughout the season. Especially, I was really moved by the separation of Meteor Man and Nori. I thought that was pretty strong, and the sadness in his eyes, that was really nicely done. My least favorite thing, I would say, is probably the way Elendil just acted very petulant. And I know people are going to disagree with me, and I know a lot about grief, and I know that you do lots of really crazy stuff when you're grieving, but in my opinion, it didn't fit the image I have of Elendil. And as far as my rating goes, I would give it an 8 out of 10.
Negroni, how about yourself?
Durin and Elrond, 100%. It keeps on giving that relationship between them. And I think my least favorite part, it's not very specific. It's just that it doesn't feel like it's only one episode left. It doesn't feel like an episode 7 out of 8 of a season.
Yes.
And that bothers me a bit. Like, where I feel like there should be more to come, or
there
like,
should have been less before.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm kind of on the fence on the episode overall. I wasn't thinking that they were going to go so hard with the people are separated from the eruption and they have to get together, and some characters disappear from a lot of time of the episode. I didn't see that coming. I thought that was going to be a little more straightforward. And overall, I give it a 7 out of 10. Very good, but nothing.
I'll go next. I would agree that I think the friendship between Durin and Elrond sparkles. That's probably I'm going to broaden it. I think there were a few moments of just connection between the two characters in every single storyline that I think has been missing from some of the other episodes. I thought there was some really nice connection between actors and characters sort of interspersed throughout the episode. So that would be my favorite. And my least favorite would be just sort of expanding on what Kitia said, the sort of, I came across this word recently, mawkish, MAWKISH. Maybe all you know, I hadn't heard it before, but sort of overly sentimental in sort of a weak way, which I think applies to both the Elendil situation, some of the stuff with the Harfoots, though I think that was redeemed by the end. And so I think that's hindering the show from getting to the next level. But I would say overall, this would fall between a 7 and 8 for me. So let's go with 7.5 then. And how about you, Strider? Let's wrap up with you.
Yes. So I really loved Elrond and Varking. They were perfect as usual. I mean, they're absolutely constantly amazing. And Harfoots, the dark horses of the whole show, I just keep enjoying them a lot. And that's, I don't know, this is Stranger, what the actor is doing there, and Nori and all of them, Poppy, they're all really lovely, especially the three of them, like three main characters, that all fine. I really love them. The tree healing scene, actually the tree branch falling on the kid and then them blaming, I guess, Stranger for that it's one of those tiny little things that just are made to keep the plot moving forward, that take away from everything. So that's like my general beef with the whole season so far, and there's been a lot of that also in this episode. So I dislike those tiny moments that take away from the actual good stuff, such as Stranger and the Harfoots. But let's if I have to put a specific one, let's say the Halbrand being so injured he is gonna die, but he can ride across Middle Earth, and Elendil just turning 65 degrees left for some reason. And around 6 or 7, I would 6 because there's so many negatives that take it down for me, but around 6.
Yes.
Just before we go, we have the last super chat of the evening, I presume. This time it's from Varking, Runesong. I have no idea who that is. And he says, I love the folks loving the elves. So this is really, really nice. Thank you for the, for the sentiment mostly.
I just Varking, couldn't shell out for the 1 cent to match bill, $4.99. So, that's like the discounts on the,
He must be a dwarf. They can be like,
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much for tuning in. This is last week is coming up. Season finale. We'll be doing one more of these. We'll see who shows up. We hope all of you will. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you, everybody, all the panelists for joining us again. Harry, hopefully, will be back next week, and have a lovely day or evening or week, such as it may be. And we will see you soon. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.
Bye, everyone.